Neon City Nights, a cyberpunk thriller. Cyberpunk audiobook. Chapter 1. The heist. The neon lights of the city were a blur as the sleek, black vehicle sped through the twisting streets. Inside, 4 figures sat silently, each lost in their own thoughts. The man in the driver's seat was focused on the road ahead, his eyes scanning the surroundings for any sign of trouble. The woman next to him fiddled with the screen of a small device, the light from the screen casting a blue glow on her face. She was the tech expert of the group, and had spent weeks planning the operation they were about to undertake. The other 2 members of the team were dressed in black leather jackets and carried high-powered firearms. They were the muscle, ready to make sure the mission went according to plan by any means necessary. As the car approached its destination, the tension in the air was palpable. The team had been hired to steal some sensitive data from a heavily guarded corporate building in the heart of the city, and failure was not an option. With a screech of tires, the driver swung the car into a side street and brought it to a stop. The team exited the vehicle, and the woman quickly led them to a nearby access point for the building's security system. Using her device, she bypassed the first few layers of security and unlocked the door leading to the stairwell. The group moved as quickly and quietly as possible, knowing that time was of the essence. As they reached the floor where the data was stored, they were confronted by several heavily armed guards. The muscle opened fire, their weapons echoing in the empty hallway. The team worked together like a well-oiled machine, taking out the guards with surprising ease. With the path cleared, the tech expert quickly accessed the data and began downloading it to the device. The others kept watch, their senses honed for any sign of danger. As the download nears completion, the group detects movement at the other end of the hallway. They turn to face a towering figure in a suit, flanked by 2 burly bodyguards. The figure's face is obscured by a holographic mask, but his voice booms with authority. "You've made a big mistake coming here," he says. "But I'm willing to make a deal. Give me the data, and I'll let you walk away." The team's leader takes a step forward, a glint of steel in his hand. "We didn't come all this way just to hand over the prize," he said. "We're finishing what we started." The standoff is short-lived. The 2 sides clash, with bullets flying and sparks flying from the energy weapons. In the end, the team is victorious, but at a heavy cost. As they exit the building, drenched in sweat and blood, their faces are grim. They know that this is just the beginning of a long and dangerous journey, but they are committed to seeing it through to the end. Chapter 2. The hunt. The team retreated to their hideout, a dingy apartment in a rundown part of the city. The adrenaline from the heist was still pumping through their veins, but now they had to focus on the next phase of their mission, decoding and interpreting the stolen data. The tech expert was hard at work, her fingers flying over her keyboard as she worked to break the encryption on the data. The others paced back and forth, their nerves on edge. Finally, after what felt like hours, a small beep signaled that the data had been decrypted. The team huddled around the screen as the information came into focus. It was even more explosive than they had imagined. Evidence of massive corruption within the upper levels of the government and the largest corporations in the city. The group exchanged a knowing look. They knew that this information had to be spread to the public. It was their duty to reveal the truth and take down those who had been exploiting the people for too long. But they also knew that their actions would not go unpunished. The powerful individuals behind the corruption would stop at nothing to silence them. And so, the team began the hunt. They knew that they were being watched, that their every move was being monitored. But they refused to back down, continuing to gather evidence and build their case. As the days turned into weeks, the team's paranoia grew. They saw suspicious figures on every street corner, heard whispers in every crowd. Their sleep was restless, filled with nightmares of being hunted down by faceless enemies. But they pressed on, driven by a sense of justice and a need for vengeance. They infiltrated secret meetings, gathering more and more evidence of the corruption that threatened the city's very foundation. As they got closer and closer to their goal, the team became more reckless. They left a trail of destruction in their wake, hoping that the chaos would provide a distraction from their true objectives. But the hunters were closing in. The team could feel their presence in every shadow, hear their footsteps echoing through every empty alleyway. Finally, they knew that they had to face their pursuers head-on. They assembled their weapons and waited, ready for the inevitable clash. It was a brutal battle, with bullets and energy blasts ricocheting off the walls. In the end, the team emerged victorious, but their victory was bittersweet. Their hideout had been destroyed, their only refuge now a distant memory. They were on the run once again, harder to find but also more vulnerable than ever before. As they slipped into the shadows, their thoughts turned to the next phase of the battle. They knew that the fight was far from over, that there were still powerful forces working against them. But with their hearts heavy and their determination unshakable, the team vowed to continue the hunt. They would not rest until the truth had been exposed and justice had been served. Chapter 3. The Underground. The team had to go underground. They needed a safe haven, a place where they could gather their strength and make their plans without fear of detection. They found it in the depths of the city, in a network of tunnels and abandoned subway stations. It was a bleak and dangerous place, full of rats and unsavory characters, but it was also the perfect hiding spot. The team set up a makeshift headquarters in one of the abandoned stations, using what little tech equipment they had salvaged from their destroyed hideout. They were careful, always keeping a low profile and never venturing out into the city during daylight hours. But even in the safety of the underground, they were not alone. There were other groups down there, other people who had been forced into the shadows by the corrupt powers that ruled the city. At first, the team kept their distance from the other underground dwellers, wary of anyone who could be a potential informer. But as time passed and they learned more about their fellow outcasts, they felt a sense of camaraderie. These were people who had been victimized by the same corrupt system that they were fighting against. They shared their stories, their struggles, and their hopes for a better future. The team began to realize that they were not alone in their mission. There were others out there, a growing number of individuals and organizations working towards the same end goal. And so, they began to reach out, forging alliances and partnerships with like-minded groups in the underground. Together, they pooled their resources, shared their knowledge, and devised a plan of attack. It was a risky strategy, but it was their only hope. They knew that they were vastly outnumbered, with resources that paled in comparison to those of the corrupt powers they were fighting against. But they also knew that they had something that their enemies did not: the power of the people. They had the truth on their side, and they had the ability to mobilize and inspire a movement. And so, they set to work. They began to spread their message to the masses, using every means they could, from graffiti on the walls of the city's buildings, to subversive messages hidden in the feeds of popular virtual reality games. They organized protests and rallies, risking exposure in order to gather together large crowds of people who were fed up with the status quo. They spoke passionately about the need for change, for transparency, for accountability. Slowly but surely, their movement began to gain traction. People started to take notice, to listen, to believe that change was possible. And as the momentum grew, the team knew that they were inching closer and closer to their goal. The underground had become the launchpad for a revolution, a rebellion against the corrupt powers that had held sway over the city for far too long. It was a risky gambit, but it was a chance that they were willing to take. For the team, the only path was forward, towards the light at the end of the tunnel. Chapter 4. Betrayal. The team's revolutionary movement was gaining steam every day. The underground network was buzzing with excitement and anticipation, as more and more people began to believe in the team's message of hope. But with success came danger, and the team knew that they were growing more visible by the day. They were being watched closely by the powerful forces they were fighting against, and they knew that any slip-up could lead to their undoing. And then it happened. One of their own betrayed them. The team had always been careful, but somehow, their cover was blown. They returned to their underground hideout one day to find a group of armed men waiting for them. There was a moment of panic, and then a firefight broke out. The team fought back with everything they had, but they were outnumbered and outmatched. In the chaos, the tech expert was captured. The rest of the team barely managed to escape, but they knew that the repercussions of this betrayal would be severe. They retreated to a new hiding spot, paranoid and on edge. They knew that the corrupt powers they were up against would stop at nothing to silence them, and they feared for their own safety as well as that of their loved ones. Days turned into weeks, and there was no word from their captured team member. The rest of the team was left to wonder whether she was still alive, and whether she had given up any information that could compromise the movement. They continued to work towards their goal, even as the weight of betrayal weighed heavily on them. But they knew that every day could be their last, that at any moment, they could be caught and forced to pay the ultimate price for their rebellion. Everything was uncertain, and the team grew increasingly paranoid. They were constantly on the lookout for signs of danger, scanning crowds and monitoring their devices around the clock. And then, one day, they received a message. It was from their captured team member, and it contained the information they had been seeking all along, the proof of the corruption that had ensnared the city. The team was overjoyed, but also suspicious. They wondered how their captured member had managed to get this information and what had been done to her to extract it. But in the end, they knew that it didn't matter. What was important was that they finally had something they could use to take down the corrupt powers that had betrayed them. With renewed determination, the team set to work, building their case and gathering their supporters. They knew that the stakes were impossibly high, but they also knew that they had nothing left to lose. It was a gamble, but one that they had to take. For the team, there was no turning back. The only way was forward, towards the truth and justice they had been fighting for from the start. Chapter 5. The Order. The team had the information they needed to take down the corrupt powers that had ruled the city for far too long. But they knew that they couldn't do it alone. They needed help, and they needed it fast. They turned to an unlikely source, an underground group known only as the Order. No one knew much about the Order, but rumors abounded that they were a powerful organization with deep connections throughout the city's power structure. The team knew that they were taking a risk in reaching out to the Order. After all, they had been operating in secret for a reason. But they also knew that the stakes were too high to leave anything to chance. They managed to make contact with a member of the Order, a shadowy figure who went only by the name of Sable. Sable was wary of the team at first, but after hearing their story, she agreed to help them. Sable led the team to a dank, underground meeting place, where they were introduced to a group of serious-looking individuals. The team could feel the power in the room, and they knew that the Order was not to be underestimated. The team explained their plan to take down the corrupt powers in the city, to reveal the truth and restore justice to the people. They showed the evidence they had gathered, and they waited for the Order's response. At first, it seemed like the Order might refuse to help. They had their own goals and objectives, after all, and they didn't want to risk drawing too much attention to themselves. But then, one member spoke up. A tall, imposing figure who went by the name of Ironclad. He looked the team up and down, and then he spoke. "We can help you," he said. "But you must first pledge your allegiance to the Order." The team was taken aback. They had no desire to join the Order. They only wanted their help in taking down the corruption that was destroying the city. But Ironclad was unyielding. "It is the only way," he said. "We must be sure that you are trustworthy before we can work together." The team exchanged a look. They knew that they were running out of options. It was a gamble, but they had come too far to let this opportunity slip away. And so, they reluctantly agreed to join forces with the Order. They took the oath, swearing their fidelity to the group and promising to do whatever it took to achieve their shared goals. In exchange, the Order gave the team access to an arsenal of weapons and resources that they could never have accessed on their own. They provided safe houses, transportation, and guidance on how to navigate the complex and dangerous world of politics and power. With the Order's help, the team was able to launch their attack on the corrupt powers, exposing the truth and bringing down the entire corrupt system in a stunning series of events that rocked the city to its core. It was a victory, but one that came at a cost. The team knew that they could never go back to their old lives, that they would always be on the run, hunted by those who sought to stop them. But they also knew that they had done the right thing, that they had fought for justice and truth and freedom. For the team, that was worth everything. They stood in the ruins of the city they had fought so hard to save, knowing that they had made a difference, and that they would continue to do so for as long as they lived. Chapter 6. The showdown. The team had achieved their goal, but they knew that their victory was tenuous at best. They were still on the run, hunted by those who sought to silence them and crush their rebellion. The corrupt powers that they had toppled were not going to go down without a fight. They were regrouping, gathering their forces, and planning their revenge. The team was ready. They knew that the final showdown was imminent, and they had prepared themselves for the battle to come. Their plans were complicated, involving everything from chaotic street fights to complex hacking maneuvers. They knew that they would be outnumbered and outmatched, but they also knew that they had the truth on their side. The day of the showdown arrived, and the team took up their positions. They had chosen an abandoned industrial park as their battleground, a desolate wasteland that was the perfect setting for their final confrontation. As the sun began to rise over the city, the team's enemies began to arrive. They came in force, their weapons glinting in the dim light of the dawn. The battle was fierce and brutal. The team fought with everything they had, using their superior knowledge and tech skills to outmaneuver the powerful forces that were arrayed against them. In the midst of the chaos, the team's leader found herself face to face with the architect of the corrupt system they had fought so hard to take down. It was a moment of high tension, as the two women faced each other, each one poised for victory. They circled each other, each one sizing up the other's strengths and weaknesses. And then, they sprang into action. It was a battle unlike any other, a frenzied dance of swords and sticks and fists. The two women moved with a grace and power that was both beautiful and terrifying to behold. The air was thick with tension and danger, as the two women battled on, each one pushing herself to the limit in a desperate bid for victory. And then, suddenly, it was over. The team's leader emerged victorious, her opponent defeated and broken before her. The battle was won, but the cost was high. The team surveyed the wasteland around them, the smoke and the rubble and the twisted metal. They knew that they had changed the city forever, that they had sparked a revolution that would transform the power structure and the lives of the people who lived there. But they also knew that this was only the beginning. They still had a long road ahead of them, one that was fraught with danger and uncertainty. For the team, there was no turning back. They had pledged their lives to the cause of justice and freedom, and they knew that they would continue to fight for that cause for as long as they lived. Chapter 7. The revolution. The team had accomplished what they had set out to do. They had exposed and taken down the corrupt powers that had controlled the city for far too long. But the real challenge was just beginning, building a new society from the ashes of the old. The team knew that it wouldn't be easy. There were still those who clung to the old ways, to the corruption and oppression that had defined the city for so long. But the team also knew that they had hope on their side. They had ignited a spark, a flame of rebellion that burned brightly within the hearts of the people. And so, the team set to work. They developed a new system of government, one that placed the power in the hands of the people rather than in the hands of the few. They worked tirelessly to rebuild the city, to bring hope and prosperity to the people who had suffered for so long under the old regime. The road was long and treacherous, and there were many obstacles along the way. But the team persevered, using their skills and their determination to guide the way to a new society. They knew that there would be setbacks, that there would be times when they would falter along the way. But they also knew that they had each other, and that together, they could overcome anything. And slowly, but surely, the revolution took hold. The people began to come together, to work towards a brighter future for themselves and for their city. The team's rebellion had become a movement, one that inspired others to join them, to fight for a better world. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't perfect. But the team knew that they had made a difference, that their actions had helped to change the world for the better. And as they looked out over the growing city, as they saw the hope and the life that pulsed through its streets, they knew that they had found their true purpose. For the team, there would always be more battles to fight, more obstacles to overcome. But they also knew that the revolution they had sparked would never die, that it would continue to grow and thrive as long as there were people who were willing to fight for a better world. And for the team, that was all that mattered. Together, they had changed the course of history, and together, they would continue to shape the future that lay ahead.